Our opening ceremonies with a pledge of allegiance from Commission Member Smith and a prayer moment of silence from Commission Member Lamar.
We stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to live in this great country, in this great city of ours. We ask that you provide us the wisdom and the courage to make the decisions that suit the interests of both our nation and our country as we work through the issues facing us tonight. I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 3 on the agenda, action on minutes. Does anybody have anything? All right, if nobody has anything, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 27th, 2026.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Item number 4, reports, actions taken by the city council and other items that Stephen wants to tell us about.
Thank you. So let's first start with council. So at the last city council meeting that was held on the 3rd, June 3rd, the council heard 3 items that had received recommendations from the planning commission. The first one was the Odekirk rezone application. Then we also had the home occupation and then the patio home ordinance updates. So under the first item, under the Odekirk application, the city council voted to approve that application. Generally speaking, and the planning commission sent a recommendation of denial with a split vote. Generally speaking, the council, though, I don't know if they explicitly made clear it. There are several of them who mentioned that they were happy to see a mix. They didn't feel like mixed use was appropriate for the property and felt like a different designation would be better. So, and then for the home occupation, the council reviewed it. They asked staff to clarify a couple items. Some of it was definition. There was some concern about storage of equipment and what equipment meant on property, and felt like the ordinance could maybe more clearly define that. And so we're working on providing because right now the ordinance prohibits like rental of equipment and storage of outdoor equipment, the draft, but wanting to define more of what that means. There's some concerns that like porta potties may not fall under that definition. And so I believe it probably still would, but we're happy to clarify it as well. Then the council also asked us to remove the auto repair from the home occupation. And so they would like us to look at adding some language. So, there's general discussion about eliminating it. So no new applications would be approved, but providing some sort of grace period. So those that are existing wouldn't just be kicked off of their license if they didn't like renew on time. So they wouldn't lose their grandfathering. We talked a little bit about it, and I actually feel like at the end they might not want us to include anything in the home occupation because all of those already have conditional use permits, and there's already a conditional use permit process to revoke those that goes through the planning commission. And so I think they're just going to rely on that, but I'll let you know on that one. And then for home occupation, they generally liked it. They continued this one as well, mostly because they wanted to explore having that bonus room above the garage. They wanted to look at language about that. If you remember the planning commission, we explored that quite a bit, went back and forth, in the end decided just to remove it. So they wanted to look at that. Then they also asked that because we removed the attached housing provision in there, and they wanted us to specifically make that not permitted use, like listed out as not permitted. Because right now, the language currently in the ordinance enables that, and it's not listed as a permitted use. But they didn't want there to be any question about it. So those changes I think will be relatively simple. It is very likely that these two, well, next week, the council is doing their budget hearing and public hearing, as many of you have probably heard. And there is some tax increases that are going along with that. And so the council, it will likely not hear these items at the next meeting, but we'll postpone them till July. And then we're doing the other item that I want to give the planning commission heads up about is we are going to do, we did the workshop with Landmark a couple weeks ago, and the initial plan was to do a workshop with the council on the 17th next week, but because of the budget that's being reviewed, they're going to hold a work session with Landmark on the 1st of July, which is their first meeting. And so we'll plan on we're starting to compile some of the thoughts from the planning commission on several of the ideas, and we'll plan on presenting those to the council then. Are there any questions?
Did you say it was just a council meeting that
Yeah.
was going
I
to
mean,
happen, not a joint session?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a public meeting, so you'd be welcome to attend, but it's not planned to be a joint session.
Okay. Just got a little confused.
Yep.
Anything else, Steve?
No, that's everything.
Okay, thank you. Item number 5, discussion and action, adoption of the West Havens Economic Development Strategic Plan. That would be Stephen again.
Okay, thank you. Sharice, would you mind pulling up the packet and jumping to I'll give you the page of the packet, so that way that might be a little bit easier. As soon as I find it. It'll be page 62 in the packet. So we talked quite a bit about this at our last meeting and held the public hearing about the economic plan. And as you all probably remember, we had quite a bit of public comment that came in during that public hearing, particularly about concerns about the designation of the property along the south side of 2550 South. So based off those comments and discussion from the Planning Commission, we talked to Rob Sant, the consultant on the project, and provided an updated map. And so as you can see on the map in front of you, it essentially just eliminates everything east of 2700 West and then also anything south of 2550 South. And to kind of narrow it into the properties that are mostly undeveloped and what that looks like. As I mentioned in the report, that we had a couple property owners that reached out to me and the mayor to talk about this, and I had a couple meetings this week. The first one was with the district, and I just did this talking with Jeff that I totally forgot Jordan Valley, who owns a large chunk of property in this area. So they own the 40 acres that's on the west side of 2700 West and north of 2550. And then they own the 2 large parcels located on the east side and some property that wraps around. They have secured this property for some water treatment centers and plants and other utility needs that they have. In our conversations with them, they initially indicated that they felt like they had about 20 to 40 acres that likely could be surplus, and that they wanted to work with the city to kind of meet the city's vision for what that area would be. So I had a phone call with their general manager earlier this week, who indicated to me that they just recently performed a study, and it was looking like it was probably going to be closer to 20 acres and not 40 acres that they would look at surplusing. And so they look at likely the front 20 acres along 2550. The other conversation I had,
Ben, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that on the east side then that you're
Yeah.
talking about? Okay.
yeah, so, well,
East section, the northeast, right?
yep,
Okay.
northeast. And then everything else they would want to keep for utility purposes. And then we also had a meeting, the mayor and I and the city manager met with the Baldwin family who owns the property on the southeast of the intersection. They own that larger parcel that's right up against the intersection. And they're the ones who sent us that. After we met, I indicated to them that I could be happy to communicate what their desires are, but might be better if they just wrote a written statement and provided, and then I could forward that to the planning commission. So I didn't misrepresent their thoughts. But generally speaking, and to kind of summarize what that letter had, is they were generally supportive of the original mapping that had a larger scope of area, but would really like the council and the planning commission to consider keeping their property and properties on the to the southeast of the intersection within the development. And so, or within the economic development area. So I created this little map today. That's why it wasn't in your packets. Would you mind pulling that up? I mean, for anybody who's online that can see it. And so based on that conversation today and my conversation with the other property owners, this is kind of what, on that feedback, what the map potentially could look like. And so you would see everything other than about 20 acres on the northwest side remain in the economic development area as is currently proposed. And then the area to the southeast would also remain in the economic development area, potentially. And then the rest of the area, we wouldn't necessarily designate this on our economic plan, but we would foresee this may be what we would translate it to our general plan when that comes through. This other corner would be residential development, and then the other corner would be utility facilities and open space. On the second page of this, this was an attempt to kind of provide a maybe more detailed interpretation of what that could potentially look like if we did it that direction, where you'd see the two corners, more of a commercial development, and then the frontage along 2550 as commercial. And as you kind of moved out from the core, that's when you might start seeing a phasing of commercial to residential, and then residential kind of along the back. So that being said, I know those are the updates that I have for the commission tonight. We do have, I guess with the hearing next week, even if the planning commission made a recommendation this week, it wouldn't go to council till July. And so there's no rush if we want time to consider this. I know there is some discussion about potentially seeing if there's any additional public comment on these changes that we would want, maybe could open it up to. So there's a few options in front of the commission tonight. Are there any questions?
I have a question. How did this meeting with the Baldwin family come about? Did the Baldwins approach the city, or did the city approach the Baldwins?
They reached out to the mayor specifically, and the mayor arranged the meeting.
Okay. I noticed there's, when I look back at the original plat for that, there seemed like there was, if I counted them up, there's over 30 individual properties or individual portions of property that are included in that. And so are we going to take comment from all of those folks, or just the folks that reach out to us?
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Thus far, I mean, I have met with several property owners, but it's been more of them proactively reaching out to the city. Like most of the property owners along the north side of the corridor we've met with and discussed they've expressed their desires for what they want to see that property like. But a lot of the individual homeowners we haven't reached out to discuss this map, other than what we saw last week that came, or not last week, but 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so I guess my concern is we had the public hearing and we had folks here, including landowners that are in the affected area. And we had at least 3 that are across the street on the northwest area. At least 3 of those landowners said they did not want this to take place. And we're still going to do it. This still is, we didn't take that out based on that landowners or those 3 landowners' requests to not be included in that. But now Baldwin's reach out and say, we do want to be included and we do want this to be commercial rather than what was originally called out as being residential missing middle compact square footage. But we want that to be commercial. And now we're going to change that to commercial because the Baldwins requested it. And I have a difficult time seeing the equitability into honoring the Baldwin's request, but not honoring the other's request. So, I struggle with that greatly.
Wasn't all that property owned by Baldwin's, or is that not?
Not all of it is. A large section is, but not every property. And I think, George brings up a good point that there are some property owners who've requested to be removed that weren't on the updated map. And, we have a property owner that came in that would like to be included. And, the map I put in front of you is an option to potentially do that. I think, this is a planning document, so it's not a zone change. And that gives the city a little bit more discretion on how we plan. And, I think oftentimes as we're trying to come up with what these plans look like, we want to take feedback from residents, but we also want to see what is viable in those uses. And we also want to kind of judge what the city wants to be there, what we think will be in the best interest of all the residents, and then try to match those as best as we can. And oftentimes there will be property owners who we may not respond to as in a way that they would see favorable, and others that we may. And that's really what it comes down to, what the planning commission feels like would be what you would want to see there and what we'd want to recommend to the council. And then what the council in the end will make the decision. But I think from my perspective, I generally feel like the 2 corners, I think, present the best economic opportunity for commercial growth in this intersection. And that's one reason why I felt like the request was likely appropriate for us to consider tonight, because I feel like it's viable and it also may meet the general needs of the city.
So if that's the case, how come that wasn't considered right out of hand in the first place before the Baldwins come in and requested it?
Well, I know this one on the northeast, that's where Isaacson had property, and that's where she was like against it, but now she's not against it because she's in this area.
That's according to the
Yeah.
letter.
Right.
letter.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it
that
from
letter,
her.
True.
So,
That's true. But I know this is where her house is.
correct.
And so if that changes, that would be one of the reasons, because she was against it, but now she's not against it for the letter.
Yeah.
I thought that the majority of the people that were opposed to this last time did live in that southwest corner, which were the caps. I don't remember any on the northwest corner, but I could be wrong. But it looks like
She was pointing at
change.
the southeast.
So this
Yeah,
residential.
she was. Yeah.
Sorry. I think she said north, but it was the southeast, Andrew.
Yeah, but I believe in the last map, the southwest corner is where most of the people came in that were in opposition to this. And it looks like, based on Steven's map, that has been updated
this
from what
order.
it was previously. Is that correct? Or am I missing something?
Correct. I think.
Well, there were 2 of the folks that were on the northwest side of the 2550, 2700 intersection that owned property in that area and said they did not want to be put in commercial.
that is correct. If I remember right. I don't have their addresses in front of me, but I do remember there were a couple.
But this
Yeah,
is.
I mean, the other thing is though, like, what detriments does it have to those people? I mean, I guess if land is developed around them, but if the landowners around them want to sell and want to have that, I mean, they can't really force it otherwise, but you know, we're not going in and rezoning for them. We're not forcing them to rezone. If they don't ever sell their property, they don't have to. If family comes in and takes over, they don't have to come in and rezone. They're not forced to, you know.
Yeah. And maybe to kind of address George's question too, I think one of the original reasons I recommend when, you know, the updated map where we kind of just cut out everything except for that one corner, I think it was partly to be responsive to majority of the comments we heard and also looking at where the most likely area of development would take place because the northwest section, that's where there are a few developed lots. There's a few homes on that corridor, but the vast majority of the property is either in agricultural use or vacant in some way or underdeveloped. And so it makes sense to look at that area as a whole for its development. So I think that was, I mean, once again, it might not be a perfect system, but that's one reason why when we proposed the initial update before we talked to a couple of the additional property owners, that's why we cut out those areas and included everything on that side.
I kind of got the impression, and it was just my impression, that the majority of the people that were here speaking about this plan, they were worried about losing their property or the city taking their property from them. That was my impression. I
Mine
don't
too.
know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they kind of were misinformed
Yeah.
what would happen with this, like they were gonna lose it all.
Right.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think there was some misinterpretation of what this plan actually meant, that this is a guiding document and didn't necessarily mean the city was bulldozing homes to build a Smiths or something. However, I did actually have there were several of those property owners still here when we got done last time, and I went and talked to them out in the parking lot. And even though I think they had a better understanding, or maybe it helped alleviate concern, but in the conversation I had with them, there is still the indication of hesitancy about having their properties included on the map, even with that clarification. But once again, I think, you know, as I said, we're trying to do a confluence of all the different needs and interests in this area and try to figure out what's best as we're moving forward.
I think looking at it just, and our job as a commission is to look at those areas in West Haven that are going to be developed, that we can take, you know, you get the best use out of, that also fits in with the community. I like this map a lot better, the way you broke it down, so that I can see like the commercial, and then we're gonna go commercial, residential back there against homes. And noticing up here on the southeast, you know, where it goes commercial, then commercial, residential, before it goes into those, I can't, like townhomes area up there. So I think where we know 2550 is gonna be a through road, it's gonna be a major throughway, that it's an area that we have an opportunity to take advantage of, but still try and make it look, I don't know, like it's still part of the community. It doesn't have to be just a highway with straight commercial. And this, where we've got open space, part of it's in open space, keeping the residential. And I think that was the cap property in the orange. Is that right? And I'm sure no one wants to live right around commercial, but that is, I think that's what those property owners have been holding out for too, on those two corners, knowing that that was going to probably develop that way. So I think as a commission, we have to decide, like, no one's going to be, not everyone's going to be happy. What's the best interest of the city? Like, is this an area that we take advantage of for the city and put some commercial properties here and hope to develop that and guide that, or bottleneck it? And so that's the decision that we have to make.
I think one of the issues, another issue, and Andrew's right, nobody has to sell. they could still keep their parcels and they're not required to sell it if they don't want to. But Mrs. Isaacson was in here speaking against it. Her house sits right on 2700, and they have horses. She's Mr. Baldwin's daughter. And we're going to put her house with horses in what is a commercial area. At least the other plans gave us some buffer between the commercial areas and going into agricultural area. But, you know, this slams commercial right up against agricultural. And our philosophy has been for the last 15 years to have some gradual transitions from one zone to the other. And this doesn't provide that.
What would you like to see, George? Just more of a stepped?
Well, I think what I would like to see, 2550 is going to be the major corridor.
Absolutely.
And what I would like to see is I took a drive today and I drove down Midland all the way to Syracuse. And you know, the initial going in position, and the reason that we have this as the original draft and around town center, it's surrounded by residential missing middle compact SF square footage and open space utility. And there was a reason for that. And it was put forth that we need that to be able to support the commercial area. But you drive down Midland, there's very little. I mean, for instance, Walmart, Lowe's in Clinton, that was all put in. I did the research on this about 5 years ago. That was all put in when Clinton had a lower population than West Haven did 5 years ago. And so, you know, that corridor is packed with businesses from here to Syracuse. And the reason is because that's a main transportation route. And I think that we should confine this along 2550 and not, you know, spread it north and south down 2700 and then have a buffer between that residential and what's currently agricultural. Now, will that remain agricultural forever? Probably not. We already went through the Donaldson properties right adjacent to the Baldwin property, and that's a swamp. We already told them you're going to have to develop around that swamp. So, you know, that's probably going to remain that way for the foreseeable future because it's a swamp.
So are you saying basically to, on this southeast corner, to make commercial like half of it? And I'm not even sure how big that is, honestly, acre wise. And then go more commercial residential, so the purple below that, the next half, so that it kind of transitions in. Is that what you're saying, basically?
That's what I that's what I think would work best here is we transition from the commercial, the borders 2550, and we transition as we move away from 2550.
George, which property did you say that Ms. Isaacson's lived at? You said right on the corner?
No, Mr. Baldwin lives right on the corner.
Right.
And Mrs. Isaacson lives on 2700, but she's,
Not far off. of
so if you look at
2750.
this commercial,
They
move it to down and to the left.
Yeah,
A little more to the left.
Isaacson's would essentially be
there.
right on that corner.
That's where the Isaacsons live.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. I was using GeoGizmo so I could figure out where all this stuff was we're
Yeah.
talking about. Thank you.
I'm just thinking of this in terms of the general plan, open house and the comments we got back from that, and the folks want open space and they want to keep that rural feel. And I think we can do that if we transition away from our main thoroughfare. The traffic along 2550 is going to be, once the western corridor goes in, it's going to be busy, and it's going to provide the same sort of business access and business travel that we have down Midland. And so I think if we focus on that corridor and then a transition away from that, I think that can both preserve a little bit of the country feel for the folks that they're wanting, and the, comments we got from the general plan, but also provide for the commercial development. But realistically, it's going to take a long time for that commercial to be developed.
Yeah.
But look, we've got this mixed use concept that Isaacson's, or Mr. Baldwin talked about in his email to us. We've got that in Wingspan. And that commercial component of Wingspan's been vacant for, I don't know, since the inception, so.
Yeah.
There's commercial opportunity around that's not even being utilized.
I think for me too, it's the type of commercial that we're going to put in at some point. Some of the pictures that I saw, that Mr. Baldwin sent in, I'm not necessarily too favorable to. It looks like more of a harder commercial area than
Yeah.
what we would probably want there.
Yeah, I like the idea in our meeting, how we talked about a developed meeting like area. I like how we talked about that, not so much the business looking
Yeah.
buildings that he put in.
Yeah, 'cause essentially, I think what his email said is that his first choice was grocery or something like that, but then he was indicated that more of that flex unit, kind of like what we have going up around Holiday, is, I mean, in our meeting, he raised that it is a high demand product, which that is true. I recently saw a report that in the Weber Davis area, that of commercial properties that are available, that flex space is the one with the lowest vacancy rate. However, I wouldn't necessarily say that means that we should build it wherever somebody may want it, that it
Exactly.
may not be the right type of commercial for a lot of different areas.
Correct.
Yeah.
So is this something you want us to
Yeah, I
ponder?
Yeah, it's just some recommendations. Like I said, if you have a direct recommendation, would like to make a recommendation tonight on the plan itself, we can forward that to the council. Or if you want some time to think about some of these concepts, then we can put it on our next agenda. That's fine too. And we can table it to our next meeting for more time for consideration. There's no pressure. Either way, if we waited a couple weeks, it doesn't get it to the council any slower, since they're not gonna, they're not taking up any additional items on their next agenda too. So like I said, there's no pressure in making a recommendation tonight, but if the planning commission would like to, then that is your prerogative.
I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts one way or the other?
I kind of, like what George said about kind of stepping that zoning from commercial, instead of commercial straight to agriculture, the big lots there, maybe do a little bit of a transition zoning there between the commercial on the southeast corner. On going, what is that, south on 2700 West? I was looking, just going east and thinking, oh, that's great that it's going into the townhomes, but not really looking at it going south.
Someone wants to talk on the line. Leslie wants to talk.
I get to.
Hi, sorry, I came into the meeting late. I am Leslie Barrow. I live at 2777 South, 2700 West. Um, I I'm sorry if I'm totally out of order on like discussion. Um, I had looked at the packet for tonight and didn't really think that our neighbors would be going commercial. Especially after they'd come to the meeting 2 weeks ago and said they didn't want to be part of the commercial, or at least some of them came into that. Um, I appreciate that the area, I'm in that big orange section, residential development. I appreciate that that's been moved out of kind of the commercial zone. That's what we were definitely hoping for, me and my siblings. But it's concerning to me to have commercial be directly facing us. That wasn't what we expected either. Seems like kind of a flip. But sorry, thank you for letting me ask a question or where that's coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that comment, we're not in a public hearing, but I think it was good to hear it. But I really think that we owe the people that came here with the understanding that this was the concept that was going to be included. I think we owe another opportunity for public comment. Once we get, this is what we really think it looks like that we're going to send to the city council. And there may be some subtle changes out of that. And if this were some minor changes, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But this is a pretty radical change from what those folks saw when we had, before they came to the public hearing. So, I think in the interest of transparency, which is a word that gets thrown out a lot lately, I think it would be in our best interest to get closer to what we're going to present to the city council and then accept public comment once again. I mean, we got a public comment. We're not even in a public hearing.
It's okay. Chair let it happen. So, at any rate, yeah, I think I agree with George. This is a lot of difference from what they saw last time. I think it would work. It probably would be a better idea to let them speak again. Give them another opportunity.
Yeah, we can schedule a public hearing on it and for the next meeting if you would like. And I guess is there direction of a map you'd like us to have ready for that meeting? Maybe we could present something very similar to what's in front of you, or we could even present a couple options. Like we could have the one that's in the packet as the map's currently updated. We could have the one that's in the one that I made today. Just a little direction to.
I think if we give too many options, you're gonna have people split all over and we won't be able to make that decision. I think we need to decide what we think and then give people the option to make their comments. And then giving too many options is gonna be a headache.
Yeah.
Total agreement.
Yeah, I think what we showed them last time and then what we have in front of us, I think we're relatively close here.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean,
Are you talking about,
that's the sense I'm getting from everybody.
Yeah.
so are we potentially talking about the previous map that was
Correct.
in discussion and something more like this?
Yes.
Okay. We can do that.
Do we need a motion on that, Amy, to send it back to public comment?
Well, I mean, you could
You just make, yeah, you just make a motion of that. I mean, on the agenda, it says discussion and action, adoption of the plan. So you could just make a motion to table it and send it and hold another public hearing.
Okay,
Okay, we can do that.
yeah, sounds good. Thank you. With that,
Before we
Can I,
make the
can I
motion,
pause? Yeah,
sure.
go ahead. Go
Uh,
ahead.
Are we going to leave it this, or are we going to do as George asked and kind of cut? And I'm not even sure if this is big enough to cut. I'm not positive. It's, I have more
So
time.
the total, so the Baldwin property that's right on the corner is about 26 acres, and it really goes down. I mean, other than there is one single family home that's right at the bottom corner that's up against 27, and there are a couple other single family homes right on 2550, but I mean, this doesn't exactly follow their property line, but it's very similar in size.
My only thought is that, like going big picture again, is that when this develops, because we're not doing great big lots and we're trying to get higher density housing, and I hate to say that out loud, but there's smaller lots is what we have seen builders come in, and that's what people can afford. The reality is when the community sees what could be there, if it's not commercial in this, it's going to be higher density housing that will end up there because it is along that thoroughfare.
Yeah, you're
No
right.
one's going to build really nice house to sit along a highway on 2550 South. And so when they sell that land, when it gets rezoned again, if we don't decide and kind of guide this to what it is, it's going to be high density housing right there. Because as that comes in, that's what it's, people know that they're going to be on a highway and the thoroughfare going from one end to the other. It's not going to be agriculture. And I think that's the hard thing is people are looking at it going, oh, I just want this to stay agriculture, but those owners are going to sell eventually and get the money out of their land. And so I just appreciate you, Stephen, trying to guide that so that it is something that people want that fits in with the community and hopefully we can find something. It's not going to make everybody happy, but hopefully we can find something and make sure we don't make any mistakes along the way, like smacking agriculture right next to commercial. So that's all, just a comment.
No, Linda, I was wondering, so if I understand you right, would you be okay? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Commercial, like maybe the first quarter of it? Residential development, make that commercial, then shift it?
Yeah, I'm fine, honestly, with the map how it is.
Okay.
How it is, I do, the southeast commercial piece, I can see, if there was some kind of transition zoning that we could do there at the the south end of that. Other than that, I think that really is open, that protects neighborhoods here, the residential, you're kind of blocking off residential with residential, but because it isn't developed yet, you're going to stagger that. You're going to transition zone that from the commercial into those bigger lots right there. So yeah, I'm mostly okay with how the proposed map is. Mhm.
And for the residents that are around there, commercial property, if it's not a super busy thing or something, I would prefer that over the multifamily apartments, whatever.
Or story high.
Yeah, and it's
Mhm.
like, there's going to be
So-
something there. What is going to be more pleasing to everybody around there? Obviously, commercial is more transitional, but I'd take that over apartments.
And having been in a home that this happened to, right? Like this is across the street from us is manufacturing. That was not ideal. We have a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And across the street now I have a great big warehouse sitting in front of me. But the lesser of two evils was that, because I'd much rather have that than multi-level apartments, which is what would fit in a commercial zone, right? Or in a high density zone, like you're gonna, you know what, I'll take the warehouse. So that's what I'm saying with having seen this happen, it's gonna happen because I'm right by 21st Street. I'm on 2200. So you're on a thoroughfare. we can do what we want, but the landowners are just gonna hold on to that land until it gets rezoned to what they want to sell it at, which is it probably gonna be commercial or high-density housing.
Mr. Baldwin's in his 90s. And the three people that are on the list are the executors that sent us the email. So that gives you a hint on what's going to happen there with that property.
Right.
There are.
How long that's going to be held on to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. There's 3 other smaller properties that are also on the north side of the south side of the street, adjacent to the Baldwin property. So you've got about 3 different owners there along 2550 South.
Yes.
So I don't know if it makes a
Also
complete
electrical, there's also
rectangle or
an
not.
electrical substation.
Yes.
So not a lot of great direction, Stephen, but.
More confusion, I think, than anything else.
I agree that maybe even if we had a public hearing just basically on this information as you have it.
Yeah, we can provide a presentation. I think another note I had is we could put in the plan itself, some general direction that the city should focus the commercial along within the intersection and along 2550.
Right.
And then it should phase to residential behind and around that commercial to provide buffer between, or to provide a separate use between that and the neighboring properties. And so that's language we could actually add into the plan itself to help provide guidance. Because the map will likely just be the blue blob, and then however we end up interpreting that into the general plan, there will probably be some wiggle room in how that's implemented through zoning.
But it's a lot better to see this than it is a big blue block.
Yep.
This makes me, I'm not a very visual person, so, I can't imagine what that looks like. So that's a lot easier to see.
Anyone else? Right. Well, would anybody like to make a motion on this? We can, as Amy suggested, or not suggested, explained, we could
Table
table it.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the adoption of the West Haven Economic Development Strategic Plan until we are able to do an open meeting with some slight changes to our maps for our community to see.
A public hearing?
A public hearing,
Okay.
yes, sorry.
Thank you. We have a motion. Anybody second that?
James did.
Oh, did
I
you?
second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
So could you go back one slide there? So I'd like to make a motion so we're very clear on the expectations for the map, that revisions,
Okay,
if you'll entertain that.
to try and,
So,
are you trying to explain her motion?
no, I would ask you if you can allow me to make one.
Counter motion?
So we
Oh,
do have a motion that's
Never had this problem before.
passed, but I do believe that and Amy could maybe correct us on this, but I think under Robert's Rules of Order, the body can reconsider a motion,
Okay.
even if it was just approved.
I'm not asking for reconsideration of the motion. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with the revision that's going to be accomplished and which map is going to be used as the basis for that revision. That makes sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, what's that?
You want to revise it to make it page 2?
Page 2?
Does that make
I
all?
would like to make a motion that we use the map that's on the screen before us as the basis for the revision, and that we limit the commercial to bordering 2550 on this southeast corner, and we provide a transition away from the commercial to the agricultural that's currently existing.
All right.
So
I'm
if
not
we're just tabling,
sure. We have a motion and I think we already voted on it.
so if we're just tabling, then,
Okay.
and because he's gonna go back how we've done revisions before, then I think that you can just let Stephen know that that's what we're doing.
All clear on what the revision is gonna look like.
We're clear.
Okay.
Okay.
Other than your vote, have you voted?
Yeah.
You voted.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So
Voted yes and then.
maybe I can
The
just,
motion is withdrawn.
You just need to make it clear.
maybe before we move on, so I just want to clarify, we're using this map that's on the screen. That's going to be the basis. Other than, would you want me to add a little bit? I could maybe cut the purple section into the commercial area and have that listed, or we could just list it directly as orange on that south section. I whatever the commission would like us to see, like me to do.
So where would that purple section going into the commercial area be?
It would
There's
just-
two purple sections and
It'd
two
be like
commercial
this.
areas.
Yeah, it would just indicate that it'd be commercial or residential. And so it's a little bit of a maybe middle ground between the two. Or it could be just the straight orange in that back part, or we could just keep it as it is. And
I like it as it is because it shows that it could be either one.
But if the purpose is for a transition zone, then George, is your vision to cut in half both the commercial and that purple zone and make the south area residential? So if you're looking at it as a gradient,
So I think, again, you got the slough there to contend with, and so that's going to be an issue there. But that commercial or residential, isn't that currently owned? No, I take it back.
Now it's
Yeah,
multiple owners.
there's houses along the frontage there on 2550
Correct.
currently, all along there.
Yep.
So I don't know how you do.
So what about if it just came
commercial.
like this? This purple came down here like this.
Well, I would like to see orange about halfway across that commercial in the lower and the purple, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, orange.
Look at that
There you go.
shipping
Paint
box.
that orange.
but you don't care to extend the orange into the purple area to the east as well? Just to eliminate the possibility of commercial extending further south in that purple area?
Further east?
On the east side, yeah, the purple east of the
Draw a
the
line.
red commercial side you're looking at.
Yeah, we probably should go ahead and if it's gonna be commercial and or residential, I don't like and ors.
Okay,
I've seen what's happened with mixed use in this city with and or, and it's all high density. So I think we need to be very clear, this is gonna be commercial, this is gonna be residential.
this is the bike trail, right? Along the Layton Canal.
And the clarity on that also, if that's residential and it's right next to commercial, it's gonna be high density. So that's,
Well,
and
you
if,
could
if
have-
I'm the property owner on the south of that, like that's, I might care one way or the other. So I do, it's good to put it on there to see what kind of feedback we get back.
Well, yeah, I think, again, I think it needs a transition. You got, so
Yeah.
how do we accomplish that? It doesn't necessarily, you know, we have to look at that, obviously. Is there enough room to do those kinds of things? Or do we then say, okay, that's gonna be the higher density right behind the commercial and the south of the commercial and or residential, and then going south from that, that's R2. I don't know,
This is just.
but that's possible to do that for future and if you got cows, right now there's cows there. You probably don't care if there's apartments next to it or higher density. The people with higher density is gonna care that there's cows next to them.
Yeah. So I guess just to be clear and make sure that everybody on the planning commission is on board for the update that we'll bring forward is we'll bring forward the map that's currently in front of us, but the areas that are marked will make orange for residential. Is that, or is that what the planning? I guess I just would like to know what the planning commission, how you would like me to present this next meeting. And
And I'm fine with how it is, so I don't need to see a change. That's just my thought. I'm fine with how this is and have discussion on this and maybe change after discussion, but I'm fine going in with this map.
Is 2,700 gonna be as busy as 2,550 in the future, down the road 20 years from now?
likely it'll be through street
It'll be
still,
main
but
roads.
I don't think it'll be at the same capacity that 2550 will be.
It's just nice to keep all in one area, like we've been telling the people when they come in, we want to keep true to ourselves, so we want to keep that little commercial. That one.
Isn't the street wider north of 2550? Isn't 2700 wider?
They
Yes.
just
To the
lightened
north.
it.
Yep, it is.
My guess is that it's also going to be
It's gonna be
wider
wider.
to the south.
Yeah, and if you remember, like when the Isams came in for their flag lot, or when Nate Polson came in for his subdivision, we required additional dedication.
Road.
Well, Stephen, I don't know to answer your question.
Okay.
I'm fine how it is, but I also like the transition, that area, if it transitions to, and I realize this is a concept, right? This
Yeah.
isn't zoning, this is a concept.
Correct.
So I think I like the option of showing that as a transition zone, right?
Or Steven said that he could put something in the plan that says, building residential or something like that, right, Steven?
Yeah, we put a note into this section of the plan that, I don't know the exact language, but it'll be that commercial growth should be focused along 2550 and at the intersection, and then behind that would be supporting residential development. Likely supporting single family residential development.
And I like that.
Yeah.
So we're essentially doing on the southeast corner, the same that's being done on the northwest corner. It's just flipped and turned over. So we've got commercial and or residential behind that. And that's all I'm saying. Let's do the same thing on the other side of the street.
Yeah, well, what I will do, based off this, I'll plan on keeping the map currently as it is, but potentially showing another option for what it could look like with residential behind. Like you said, right now we're still in concept, and so looking at a couple I think it's appropriate at this point.
I think that sounds good.
There's a tiny, tiny little house there.
Yeah, they're different.
Mm.
Oh.
Mm.
Is that enough direction?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
You don't need a motion for all that mess?
Nope.
Okay.
That was
Good.
that was great.
All right, item number,
Sure.
sorry,
Another round.
no, sarcasm, never. Not
That
out of-
didn't mean to be sarcastic at all.
Not from James. It's almost as
Maybe
bad
from
as
me.
I am.
No,
Item number 6, discussion and action for consideration of a conditional use permit at 2441 West, 1725 South, parcel number 154200042, to allow employees who do not live at the residence, and the applicant is Jacqueline Lugo, who Stephen told me wasn't here tonight. So,
Yeah. The applicant did ask to be excused. She had another obligation tonight, wasn't able to come to the meeting. So the applicant is requesting that the planning commission approve a conditional use permit for a home occupation that employs more than one individual who does not live at the residence, which is stated on the agenda is at 2441 West, 1725 South, which is zoned R 2.5. The proposed business provides wood flooring maintenance and installation service. The applicant has stated that the business operates primarily off-site and the residence is used as an administrative office, and one employee who takes the company van is responsible for picking up the others at their homes. And my conversations with the applicant, and as you saw in the report and included in the packet, they indicated that the employees don't report to the home at all, and that the home is just used for administrative purposes. One thing I do want to point out with this application is that I actually was holding, there was a potential that this wasn't even going to be on, because based on the new updated or the proposed home occupation code, this would no longer need a conditional use permit, because we clarified in there that if employees weren't reporting to the home, then you did not need a conditional use permit. So just to kind of I'll go through the different aspects of our application. There is one other item that I would like that I think the planning commission should be aware of, and how we are interpreting the code. Generally speaking, we have the list of the conditional use standards from within the code that we're asked to review as anytime something comes in. Because of the simple nature of the application and the limited impact that the use would have to the neighborhood, a lot of the normal conditions don't apply or that we don't find any impact on. So if you look at like the site design, because it is being used as a home office and just used for administrative purposes, and the work is completed on site, we don't really see an additional site plan or information that would need to be added. For access, the site and for access and parking, the applicant is just proposing to use one unmarked vehicle. That is a work vehicle, but that is not marked, that they plan on having parked in their driveway. So staff, as we reviewed that, because there's no additional vehicles except for the one truck on site, or no on-site storage beyond the needs of the home office, we do not anticipate any impact or strain on public services or on neighbors that may create a nuisance. With that being said, there is a provision in our code that talks about that if you have a work vehicle, that the applicant would need to park a business-related vehicle behind the front plane of the home on a paved surface. As we reviewed it, because the vehicle is unmarked and used for the same purpose as a personal vehicle, staff do not find that it meets the standard for a business-related vehicle and be parked in the driveway. And that's partly to do with how we've historically interpreted the code, and based on what will likely be approved. The new ordinance clarifies that it's only marked vehicles that meet that definition, to clarify what has been traditionally interpreted. So that is the one item that I wanted to make sure I pointed out to the commission for how staff has interpreted that. So you could have if there's any concerns about that, we could discuss that and weigh in onto that. So based on that, we staff recommends the planning commission move to approve the requested conditional use permit for the home occupation and finds that there's no detrimental effects of the proposed land use and can reasonably be anticipated, and there's no conditions recommended.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I can confirm that the van is completely white, is unmarked, and so is the pickup, so. In case anybody's really wondering about that. Anybody have any question? Comments? Motions?
If we're good to go, I'll make a motion to approve the requested conditional use permit for the home occupation at 2441 West, 1725 South, finding that there are no reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the land use that are not already mitigated with the proposal.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I,
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Andrew. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. They got their CUP. We don't have item number 7. They withdrew that, or
They
Or
didn't withdraw
they
the
can-
application, but they indicated that the site and building plans that they initially provided, they've withdrawn that aspect and are providing a new plan. So.
okay. So on to item number 8, discussion on the transportation element of the general plan scope review.
Thank you. You guys hear a lot from me today.
Yes.
Uh, So this last fall, I guess it was winter, West Haven applied for a grant to complete our transportation master plan and applied for $83,000 with a match of $7,000 for a total of $90,000 from Wasatch Front Regional Council for their transportation and land use connection program. This is the same grant that we got for our general plan, and that was awarded to us in full. And so, which is great, really exciting. I'm really excited to work on this plan. As part of this plan, we indicated to, myself and the engineering office and city manager, when we applied for the grant, we looked at different aspects that we felt like were needed and wanted to be examined. And I have those listed in the report, the items 1 through 12. And a lot of those are pretty standard, transportation master plan items, particularly like the modeling and forecasting what traffic needs are going to be, and summarizing what the transportation needs are and how those needs and our land use planning interconnect, and then identifying areas where the roadways and transportation would need, or how our transportation system would either need to be expanded upon or better connections would need to be made. And so those are most of what the plan is doing, but there are a couple other items that we wanted to tackle. One of the big ones, and I think one of the reasons why we got the grant, is there's a new state code, SB 195, that was passed a couple of years ago, that requires cities to do some additional planning within our transportation elements of our general plan that would include key connections, cost estimates, and funding sources, and construction barriers for priority connections, and that's within the region itself. And the Wasatch Front Regional Council indicated last summer that those applying, and by code, we'd have to have those have to be implemented by July 1st, 2027, so in a year. And Wasatch Front Regional Council indicated that that was going to be a priority under their consideration for this grant program to help cities come into compliance. A couple other things that we found that were needed is we really wanted to look at some trouble spots within the community. There we have a few areas where we felt like our transportation system is lacking, where either it's limited to single access or too few access points, and also intersections or other roadways that could use a little bit more thorough review. We wanted to also look at an updated future roadway map. That's pretty standard within Most plans, and we kind of have one, but we don't have a more traditional one, at least one that hasn't been updated in a while. And so creating one of those, we felt like would be important. And with that, we wanted to review our street cross sections identified in the public works standards. So what that is, if you're unfamiliar, is typically on a future roadway map, you identify what different road sizes they need to be or classification. So standard classifications is you have local, which are the smallest, collector, which are kind of mid-range, and arterial, which is your largest. And sometimes you have like collector 1, collector 2 to kind of pull, to kind of, if you need additional levels within that. And then within those layers, you create cross sections, standards that have what is to be included in that roadway. So your sidewalk, how large will it be? Will it be 4 feet, 5 feet? Then your park strip, curb gutter, and then your roadway number, how wide your asphalt's going to be, and how many travel lanes are going to be included in that. And then also on the other side. And so we have we currently have some standards in our public works, standards that we as staff felt like could use could use some review and updating, particularly if we're going to update a future roadway map. And then we also wanted to include an active transportation element, which would review our trails and bike lane plans and designing, and as we update our cross sections to include those type of networks in them. Like, I think a good example is you see a lot of cities will pick some of their major corridors and will add shared use paths on the side. So instead of having a 5-foot sidewalk, you might have a 10-foot path on the side that's separated, in order to provide better connection to key areas like commercial hubs or whatever it might be. And so those were kind of our stated goals as we applied for this grant. And so after the grant was awarded, I've been working, my staff, including myself, Damien, city manager, and city engineer, have been working with a representative from the Wasatch Front Regional Council to kind of create a scope that we felt like would meet the needs of the city, get a little bit more in details of the intent, and also to meet the requirements of state law. As noted within the report, state law requires that as part of the general plan, you have a transportation element, and requires that that transportation element contain several items, and then you have the addition of what SB 195 added. And so as we put together this RFP, we made sure we'd comply with state code, but then we'd also wanted to include these other items that we were looking at as well. And so that's kind of a basic summary of it. I did include the current working draft of the RFP. I think one of the biggest differences that maybe when we were looking at trouble spots, there were a couple areas that were specifically identified within the RFP itself. This is on page 124 of the packet. If you're looking at that in front of you on the second bullet point on that page, there's a sub bullet point that talks about the kind of key areas. So some of those that we identified was areas north of 2100 south between 1900 west and I-15, east of I-15 around 2100 south interchange. So those main areas when you look at the city along the interchange, we have few developments that's like Riverwalk, the Flying J area, where we have a lot of development or potential development with very limited access points, and potentially some regional planning and coordination that would need to take place to resolve some of those issues. So we wanted to make sure that we included these areas specifically to look at to help resolve some of those. Some of the other ones that we were looking at is the 3300 South and Midland intersection, which is that weird intersection right when Midland kind of takes off from 19, and you have You have it kind of there's a funny curve, yeah, and you have the slip lane that goes right into 33, and that's been an issue the city has had concerns about for years, and I've had some conversation with UDOT, and there's been some preliminary reviews on how to fix it, but that's an area we'd want to take a look at. We also wanted to look at property between Midland and Hinckley. So if you've that rezone that recently came in, there's some concerns about access. When we've talked to UDOT, they have concerns about essentially they would like to see some sort of transportation system that connects the both highways and potentially stubs into Roy as well. And so we felt like that would be an appropriate place to kind of dive further in. And then those are the kind of the big ones that we've considered. And there potentially could be others as identified when we go through the process. And so, and sorry, you can stop me if there's any questions. I'm kind of just
Oh, good.
right.
This
through the-
Midland and Hinckley at 2400 West, where is that? I've been trying to find it and I really
Is
don't know
that-
what property you're referring to.
Yeah, Midland and
That where we have projected apartments going in?
yes, that is the place. So 2400 is, do you know where the trail crossing is on Midland? You have
Yes. Oh,
the
yeah, okay.
overhead signal.
Uh-huh.
That street
Oh,
is
that one.
2400 West that stubs into. It's kind of weird because it curves.
Right.
But that street is labeled 2400 West. And the idea is that, well, because we have this area projected for multifamily, it's currently industrial. So either under its current zoning or under potential future zoning, there could be likely a heavier traffic impact from development. And so we'd like to see how we'd like to coordinate with UDOT and create a plan for how that would best be addressed. There's also some plans. There's currently, if you can see on the map where it says Denver Rio Grande, there is a old railroad track that will likely. It's been indicated to the city that it'll likely be abandoned. And so there will be possible connection points because Roy has some property over there that doesn't have any other connections out. And so it is likely that when we do some planning here that UDOT will want us to take into consideration, and it's indicated to the city that they want us to take into consideration those properties to ensure that they have proper access as well. And so that's that area.
Would the plan be to signalize
Yeah.
2400 at Midland?
Yeah, I think that would be the ideal. It is about evenly split between 1900 and Midland and Hinckley. And so it's not a bad, if is going to be an additional signal, that's probably the most likely location that it could be in. There's also been some thought and internal conversation about potentially routing traffic from the 3300 South intersection that you see there where it's kind of screwy, because that's actually one of our most dangerous intersections in the city, and rerouting it through 2400 to a lighted intersection if that were to develop like that. And so those are some of the questions that we want to ask, like if that was the case, how would that happen? And then the light industrial property that's located on 3300 South is likely, we have indicated that it is likely a potential redevelopment option. And if that was to redevelop, what would that look like as well? And how would it interact with our transportation system? So a lot of questions in the area. And that's one reason why we'd want to examine it a little bit further.
Personal opinion, rerouting traffic onto 2400 is not a good idea. There's a lot of high density in there.
Yep. Yeah, I think, and I mean, this will be a question during the planning process, but I think one reason why it has been looked at as a potential option is there's very few driveways that actually access out. There are a couple homes right near 3300 South, but other than that, there's controlled access points through the multifamily development, which could allow for better traffic control. But once again, there are some other options being looked at as well for how to resolve kind of the transportation issues in this area, which is why we can consider it a trouble spot at the moment.
Yeah. Clear cut.
Um,
Stephen?
yeah,
I'd recommend that all the areas that we've identified in the E EDSP be added to this transportation plan for consideration to be looked at.
that's,
I would think they would do that as a natural part of that, but that's just my thought.
yeah, and it'd probably be good to call that out, because one of the things that you're supposed to do is look at our general plan and connect the transportation system to that. But it might be good to call out under the key areas, areas of potential economic development as identified within West Haven strategic plans.
Yeah. Good idea.
They did. Didn't they do a swan there? They did it.
And so
Yeah.
kind of just outside the scope itself, our thoughts of the planning process is that we would like to, this is on page 124 of the packet, or page 2 of the draft RFP, is that the consultant would provide the city, the contract is kind of weird because they contract directly with WFRC. They're actually a contractor of WFRC who administers that. But as we've seen with the general plan, the city really leads and guides the project. So they're supposed to provide a Gantt chart of timelines, which is, the Gantt chart is just one of those charts that kind of has bars that show they do this task from this date to this date.
I was going to thank you for putting that in there. I had to Google it so I knew what it was. I learned something new.
Yeah. So it would provide approximate dates and meeting times and schedules. The idea is that they would conduct all the necessary studies, research. They would hold regular meetings with West Haven and WFRC staff to provide updates and solicit feedback on the plan's progress. That we would create a steering committee selected by West Haven City to receive guidance at key milestones through the planning process. They'd also have to work with regional partners, including UDOT, Weber County, WFRC, and adjacent cities. We did put in there that we would want to host a minimum of at least one public open house and one online survey to engage residents and gather input. As part of this process, then we'd conduct a joint workshop with the West Haven City Council and Planning Commission at the midway point. Mostly to show kind of like, this is the big ideas from the plan, and get feedback to make sure when they bring the actual draft transportation element, that it has received some of that common feedback. So then they would be responsible for presenting the draft at a minimum of one planning commission meeting and at one city council meeting. And then they would be responsible for providing the element to staff for feedback and review. And then they would require to provide all documents, including maps, roadways, the plan itself, in the appropriate format, so that way we can incorporate them. That's important because sometimes we've done plans where they just provide the PDF, but we don't have the shape files to actually implement it on like an online map. And so having those files are important to help us be able to communicate it more clearly. And then under deliverables, it mostly summarizes that they would have to follow state code, and then include the different items that we've asked for within the scope and other elements. So with all that being said, I have the one item of feedback, all areas in the strategic plan. Are there other comments or feedback on the scope, or is there anything you'd like to see or any questions?
I think it'll be great to have this.
I'm just excited to see that.
I should see a plan, that'd be great.
Yeah,
I think the public would love to see that too.
I think transportation plans, I really like transportation plans because they're normally pretty clear cut on how to implement. And a lot of times they can help really guide you how you adopt your development code because it can help provide like where you put trails or where you know, when you do land dedication for roadways, those type of things. So, thank you. The plan is moving forward is I'll submit the update to WFRC tomorrow and they'll be posting it in the next day or two.
Okay.
So,
Great.
yeah, so hopefully we'll have a consultant early this, well, midsummer and get rolling on it.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Stephen, you're up. Workshop update up to the landscape ordinance.
Yes. And so I have printed off a copy for each of you. I think my goal is today is to provide more of an introduction. We kind of know what we're looking at. And then if there is discussion that the planning commission would like to have, definitely open to that. But my guess is that you may want time to kind of review the actual plan itself. Excuse me, not plan, the proposed ordinance. So just a little background on this. When the city contracted with Landmark Design to do our water element, as part of that contract, we included them to review our landscape standards and requirements since they have multiple landscape architects on staff and they do landscape design. You know, they do planning and landscape design at the firm to provide some feedback on ways that we can help improve our water conservation and also help enhance the feel of the city essentially. And so the document that's in front of you that I printed out is the red line version of that. And I will email out a digital copy of that after tonight's meeting so that you can have that as well. Just a couple notes as you're going through this. And I have this in my first comment that the colored text text are the changes. There are a couple places where the color of text changes from red to like a green or purple. Mostly what that indicates, this has been through a couple iterations. And so the different coloring really just represents that maybe somebody else made a comment on a different phase. Just how Word tracks it. There's also a few times, and you'll see this particularly we added a new section of code that is the general landscape provisions. And that is a brand new section, but it borrows a lot from other sections. So you'll see some of that text, even though it's a brand new section, you see some of that text that's not highlighted because it's existing but it's existing somewhere else. And that's just how we're decided to track that change. So I apologize for any type of confusion. So partly the first few sections have the most change. So in front of you, I've also provided just a copy, just a straight copy of the current ordinance of the first several sections that have the most change and that the changes might be the most confusing. So you have something to compare it on to. And so I'll kind of walk through some of the biggest changes that we're looking at and what is being recommended. And then there is one section that I would like the Planning Commission to look at, because this is something that was recommended by Landmark, but as me and Damien have discussed it, we felt a little bit more unsure about how to proceed with it. And that goes to single family, what the single family standards are. And so like I said, I don't necessarily think we should dive into it today unless there are strong opinions on it already formed. But I'll point out a couple things.
I strongly think that we should not dive in very deeply.
Yes. So the first two sections are mostly just clarifying and providing definitions. So we rewrote the purpose to try to be more in line with what we believe the code is trying to accomplish and with our water element. And then in the next section is definitions. We added several definitions in the code and then clarified several others. And I don't know if there's anything particularly that's worth calling out within that for you to kind of narrow in on. Then for the applicability section, it's currently just a single paragraph and we summarize and simplified that standard. So the next section under general landscape provisions, that's where we added, that's the new section. And we provide, currently the code just jumps right into commercial and institutional, industrial, and multifamily. But we felt like it would be important to kind of provide, there's a lot of the provisions that were in there that felt more that they would apply more generally across the city, like park strip governing, for example. And so we included several of those ideas here in this section. And a part of this, one of the other things we wanted to do was define a little bit more of what our trees were like. And this jumps into a little bit more later on, but this provides some broader definitions for trees, and the code defines different areas of where they could be planted, particularly for public trees planted in public property. So the next section, commercial, industrial, multifamily, and public facility development standards. This is where we see probably the bulk of the changes. However, some of these are just rolled into from our design review. So if you look at section B1, that's on page 7 of the document in front of you, right at the bottom. The B1A and B, this section is taken directly from our design review process. So in our design review section of code, we have a landscape standard that is not in our landscape code, not in our landscape section. And so our proposal would be to move that from that section into here to kind of keep everything together. And then we added under that same section, we added a little bit more under C, we added a little bit more detailed description under multifamily that would essentially require that all areas of multifamily that aren't otherwise encumbered by the development itself or amenities would have to be landscape and meet the landscape standards, where for industrial and commercial properties, we're really focusing on the front, side, and parking lot, where if you have a little bit of area behind your building, we're not necessarily anticipating that they plant a bunch of trees and shrubs back there that are not in public view. And that reflects kind of our current standards as well. And then within our parking lots section under this code it meets our general, like under DUI, which is in 8. We currently, that first paragraph is currently from our code, though reworked just a little bit. And then under 2 and 3 underneath that, it talks a little bit more about what that actually means, what we consider parking lot landscaping. And then the rest of the section kind of jumps into what trees and ground cover and plantings mean. Another thing that we added that I felt like was impactful is under F in that same section on page 10. We added a water source limitation and alternative compliance. We've had a few properties in the last year that have not had secondary water or be able to water with our culinary system. And so the Planning Commission has been able to waive some of those landscape requirements. But as we talked about it, I was like, we still want something there, like not just allow them to just put gravel down. And so we provided this section would provide some standards for what that would look like. And so there's something we can point them to, like, you don't have to plant trees, but you still have to do some rocks and boulders and whatever else. So the other big changes that we have.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
why are pavers no more than 5%?
I think the concern about that was that if you have too many pavers, it may become impermeable for stormwater.
Okay.
I don't know if 5% is the right measure. They're also, depending on the paver itself, sometimes they can connect a lot of heat. So we feel like pavers might be appropriate for either some landscape features or walking stones or whatever, but we didn't want them to cover a large section of pavers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the other section, and there's quite a few updates throughout, as you can see. But one of the other sections I wanted to kind of look at was single family and call the planning commission's attention to. This section is quite a bit more detailed than the current code. The current code has a lot of these same restrictions, like you still can't do more than 35% of lawn, and you have to plant. There's some water-wise landscaping requirements that are required, but this really kind of hammers out several more details. And I think this raises, at least in my mind, I think some of these are generally good, but it raises a couple concerns that I want the planning commission to consider as you're reading through this, that the city doesn't really enforce, like we have only enforced residential landscaping based off complaint. And it's, I want to always say that it's super fun to do that. And whether or not, and how much the city wants to get involved policy wise, whether or not somebody, how much landscaping somebody does in their front yard or backyard. Like, are we okay with somebody just doing rocks if that's all they want? If they want very low maintenance, or based on the changes, it would require that, you know, these landscape, that their that the landscape areas of their yard would have 50% ground cover at maturity. Is that do we want to venture down that road? That's really the question, because currently that's not something our code requires, but it was something recommended by our consultant. And so we felt like it'd be appropriate to bring this, you know, to raise this with the planning commission for your consideration. I do know, talking to our code enforcement, he does get complaints about yards and weeds and landscaping and dust, even when people mow their weeds. We still get complaints about this. So this would help address some of those concerns. But once again, some of this is policy and what the city wants to do. So anyways, I just kind of want to provide that as some food for thought as the planning commission is reading through this.
Is turf grass artificial? Is
No,
what
that
we're
would
talking?
be,
Grass.
that'd be just grass. Yep.
So one thing that jumps out at me is on page 14, item number 1, for the single family residential, required landscaping in the park strips. So Weber Basin has an entire flip your strip program to take your turf out of the park strip. So we're saying, no, you can't engage in that program. You gotta have grass there.
No, the idea is grass would still not be allowed in a park strip, but it would be encouraged that additional or other types of water-wise landscaping would be included in the park strip.
So it says required landscape in the park strip, front yards and side yards that are visible from the street shall consist of live plant materials with an automated irrigation system.
Correct.
You gotta have live plant materials in your park strip.
Yep, that would be the idea.
So you can still have rocks or whatever, but you need to have some live plants as
Yep.
well. Okay.
Yeah.
So how much rock and how much live plant materials?
As it would require that at maturity, single family landscapes shall have at least 50% living plant cover. And so that would be overall between those areas. You could have areas that didn't have any landscaping, but on average, you'd have to have 50% cover.
So would that comply with Weber Basin's flip your strip requirements?
Yeah, their flip their strip requirements do allow for materials within park strip. They just want to get away from lawns and park strips, mostly because the lawns themselves, once part of it is the irrigation system to sprinkle something so narrow. There's oftentimes overspray, and you have to put in more sprinklers to hit those areas, and so it's a lot less efficient. The other reason why they don't want grass in there is more from a practical reason, that park strip grass is more decorative than it is functional.
I would put wording in there that talks to compliance with Weber Basin or other irrigation companies. Flip your strip programs would be acceptable to the city.
Yes, and I thought we had a reference to that, but I will double check.
Yeah.
I just don't want folks to look at that and say, oh, I can't flip my strips.
Yeah.
Right. So I've had neighbors tell me
Flip
that.
my lid, but I can't flip my strip.
I flip my lid. Huh.
Or I am flipping my lid because I can't flip
Flip my
my strip.
strip. There you go. Yeah, that's more like it. What about I've seen a lot of ads on TV with the turf, artificial turf lady selling.
Yeah.
That's gonna become a thing in the future, especially if we keep having low water years. Are we gonna address that?
Yeah, is that allowed?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it is listed. That's such a good question. Sorry, I've been through this a few
Oh, you're
times.
good.
Something.
In St. George, they sell it down there at Home Depot, right? You can buy it by that, yeah,
Because
it's like carpet.
would be allowed, other than you would still have to meet the 50% as the code is currently written.
Live.
Where is that listed at?
That would be on page 14 under 2. I don't know what the heading section is. I think that's A2.
Let's see. Turf grass.
Yeah. The other thing that may be worth looking up is the code recommends that landscapes follow the Localscapes program, which is a landscaping guide design recommended for Utah yards. They have a website, so you can go and explore that. They actually have designs that you can look at, and designs even for park strips that have live materials that are still more water efficient. And so that I can send, when I send out the digital version of this, I'll send out a link to that website so you can take a look at that as well. And then to kind of wrap up, most of the rest of the code is more clarifications. Like we provided a list in the trees and shrubs and regulations of public ways and places. We provided a little bit more detail for what type of trees and the planting standards that we'd require. And then we also, there are a few provisions of our code I don't even know if we've ever utilized with our penalties and bonding. So we've made a few updates to those. But generally, most of the updates have been either a reorganization or some elimination of some of those standards. So kind of what I would like to do is give the planning commission some time to review this.
Yeah.
And plan to come and discuss it at our following meeting.
I'm good with that. One thing I want to look through it, preface it just for the future with the water, everybody's the pressure. Maybe we go to Xeriscape because there's some really beautiful yards when I was in St. George, I have no plants at all. So
yeah, I think it can be done well.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless there's any other questions, or that's all I have for that.
No, I think
Nice
we'll
job.
look at it.
You've been
Thank
busy.
you, though. That's a lot of work. Thank you,
Yeah.
Stephen. All right. Item number 10.
There
Wonder
you
what that is.
Come on, hurry. Come on, Linda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm not opposed. My eye is an eye.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody.